Hi there, I'm Annie. Today I want to talk about monsters in the night. So I've had a lot of trouble with anxiety in my life. In the last 5 years, it's gotten so much better that it's really not an issue anymore. Of course, just like anybody else, I have moments of worry, but I don't get carried away with that worry the way that I used to. What I came to realize is that anxiety really is a habit. It's a habit that I was participating in. It was a habit that was possible to break, and that's what I did. I want to talk today just pretty briefly about just one major key to solving that problem. This was just kind of a major realization and a major turning point that helped me really start to undo that habit of anxiety. So a lot of times the anxiety would come at night when I was trying to sleep. I think this is pretty common with a lot of people. You can't sleep because you're laying in bed at night thinking about all the negative possibilities. I have lead NE, and so it's really easy for me to think about possibilities. One of the traps that the lead NE can fall into is thinking of endless negative possibilities. What if this? What if that? And a lot of times that can keep people awake at night. You just can't be a very effective person if you're not getting enough sleep. So you do have real legitimate problems in your life, but you need all of your energy and health behind you to actually take positive action in solving those issues in practical ways, instead of just wasting your life force cycling in anxiety, just worrying. Worrying doesn't help. It doesn't get you anywhere. At some point in my late 30s, or maybe even 42 or something like that, I finally noticed that things seem really worse at night. It was like whatever problem I was dealing with became a monster. And then I would wake up in the morning and I would notice, wow, that thing that I was worried about, it is troublesome. There are reasons to worry about that, but it's not as big of a monster as it seemed like it was last night. And so I would notice that, but then I would totally forget and it would happen again. I would totally forget, and then once again, night after night, become just sort of overwhelmed with these anxieties that seemed so big and so real and so monstrous, terrifying, grotesque anxieties. And then once again, I wake up in the morning and I think like, yeah, that's a problem, but there are actual practical steps that I can take to solve that today. There are practical things I can do that will make me feel better about this problem by the end of the day, or work towards a solution. And then I would just keep going unconscious, just keep forgetting that pattern that I noticed. It's really weird. The anxiety seems so real. But after this repetition many times, I really started to see the pattern but keep it in my conscious mind, and I sort of stopped going unconscious. And then I still feel that way sometimes, especially if I have certain hormones. Like my hormones fluctuate, and I tend to have 2 or 3 days in the month where I feel this anxiety more intensely. And so I think it's a chemical thing. I think it's just my hormones fluctuating. I noticed that pattern so many times that I finally got to a point that when it was happening, when things got really big and scary and monstrous in the middle of the night, I would say to myself, oh, this is that pattern again. This is that thing that happens. It seems so real right now. It seems so big and so terrifying, but I bet when I wake up in the morning, it won't seem so scary. I somehow was just able to bring that into consciousness. And I don't know why it was so difficult to keep that pattern conscious when I was younger, because, in general, I see patterns, I notice patterns, but we all have things that are unconscious. And that's just how long it took me to finally notice that when I feel that way and things seem really terrifying, maybe it's not as real as I think it is right now. And that was one of the major keys to untangling my anxiety. It was just awareness of the pattern, awareness of my reaction and my behavior, and seeing myself repeat that over and over again allowed me to step outside of it and look at it more objectively and say, oh, I'm doing that thing again where I'm blowing things out of proportion. I really think that any kind of growth is, coming against something difficult, spaces where there's, friction in your life, and bringing awareness and consciousness into that, seeing a pattern, seeing your own perceptions, your own reactions to things, and then choosing differently. You can't really choose differently until you have brought enough consciousness and awareness to the thing. So you have to practice over and over and over again, coming to consciousness and stepping outside of it. So you feel anxiety and you step outside of it. Well, that was just a major key for me, just noticing that things are blown out of proportion at night. And I think this is a really common phenomenon. I think that a lot of people will say that. I was so worried about XYZ, at 3 a.m. But then when I woke up in the morning, I realized it's not really that big of a deal. Or, there are ways that we can work on this today and manage it, work towards a solution. If you want a little shortcut, I would say just remember that. So I'm planting the seed in you right now. Maybe you are a person who stays up at night worrying. The next time that happens to you, try to remember this phenomenon that things do seem worse in the middle of the night and will probably seem better in the morning. So then at that point, if you notice that pattern and interrupt it enough, then in that moment you can choose differently. You can just set that aside and say, hey, why don't I not worry about this right now? Because that's not productive and it probably isn't as big of a deal as it seems like it is right now. Because there's some kind of craziness that happens in the middle of the night. I don't know if it's like brain chemicals or something makes things seem scarier, and they're not actually that scary when you wake up in the morning. So just remember that. Maybe it'll be a key for you also the next time this happens to you. If you want to talk about anxiety, I have a lot of experience with that, and I'm happy to listen. If you'd like to book a session with me, just find my link down in the description.